About to pull his laptop out of its bag, but in this setting, both the nylon bag and the plastic computer have a strip mall tawdriness. Besides, he has to resist this sophomoric tendency to take notes all the time. Avi himself said that nothing was going to happen at this meeting. All the important stuff is going to be subtextual. Besides, there is the matter of Van Eck freaking, which Cantrell probably mentioned just to make Harvard Lee paranoid, but which has Randy a bit rattled too. He opts for a pad of graph paper, the engineer's answer to the legal pad, and a fine-point disposable pen. The Sultan has an Oxford English accent with traces of garlic and red pepper still wedged in its teeth. He speaks for about 15 minutes. The room contains a few dozen living bodies, each one a big sack of guts and fluids, so highly compressed that it will squirt for a few yards when pierced. Each one is built around an armature of 206 bones connected to each other by notoriously fault-prone joints that are given to obnoxious creaking, grinding, and popping noises when they are in other than pristine condition. This structure is draped with throbbing steak, inflated with clenching air sacs, and pierced by a Gordian sewer filled with burbling acid and compressed gas, and a squirt with vile enzymes and solvents produced by the many dark, gamey nuggets of genetically programmed meat strung along its length. Slugs of dissolving food are forced down this sloppy labyrinth by serialized convulsions, decaying into gas, liquid, and solid matter, which must all be regularly vented to the outside world, lest the owner go toxic and drop dead. Spherical, gel-packed cameras swivel in mucus-greased ball joints. Infinite phalanxes of cilia beat back invading particles, encapsulate them in goo for later disposal. In each body, a centrally located muscle flails away at an eternal circulating torrent of pressurized gravy. And yet, despite all of this, not one of these bodies makes a single sound at any time during the Sultan's speech. It is a marvel that can only be explained by the power of brain over body, and in turn by the power of cultural conditioning over the brain. Their host is trying to be appropriately sultanic, providing vision and direction without getting sucked down into the quicksand of management. The basic vision, or so it seems at first, is that Kinakuta has always been a crossroads, a meeting place of cultures, the original Malays, Foot and his dynasty of white sultans, Filipinos with their Spanish, American, and Nipponese governors to the east, Muslims to the west, Anglos to the south, numerous Southeast Asian cultures to the north, Chinese everywhere as usual, Nipponese whenever they are in one of their adventurous moods, and, for what it's worth, the Neolithic tribesmen who inhabit the interior of the island. Hence, nothing is more natural than that the present-day Kinakutans should run big fat optical fiber cables in every direction, patch into every major national telco within reach, and become a sort of digital bazaar. All of the guests nod soberly at the Sultan's insight, his masterful ability to meld the ancient ways of his country with modern technology. But this is nothing more than a superficial analogy, the Sultan confesses. Everyone nods somewhat more vigorously than they did before. Indeed, everything that the Sultan was just saying was, in fact, horseshit. Several people jot down notes, lest they lose the Sultan's thread. After all, the Sultan says, physical location no longer matters in a digitized, networked world. Cyberspace knows no boundaries. Everyone nods vigorously except for, on the one hand, John Cantrell, and on the other, the grizzled Chinese guys. But hey, the Sultan continues, that's just dizzy-headed cyber cheerleading. What bullshit. Of course locations and boundaries matter. At this point, the room is plunged into dimness as the light pouring in through the window wall is throttled by some kind of invisible mechanism built into the glass. Liquid crystal shutters or something. Screens descend from slots cunningly hidden in the room's ceiling. This diversion saves the cervical vertebrae of many guests who are about to whiplash themselves by nodding even more vigorously at the Sultan's latest hairpin turn. God damn it, does location matter in cyberspace or doesn't it? What's the bottom line here? This isn't some Oxford debating society. Get to the point. The Sultan is whipping some graphics on them. A map of the world in one of those politically correct projections that makes America and Europe look like icebound reefs in the high Arctic. A pattern of straight lines is superimposed on the map, each joining two major cities. The web of lines gets denser and denser as the Sultan talks, nearly obscuring the land masses and the oceans as well. This, the Sultan explains, is the conventional understanding of the Internet, a decentralized web connecting each place with all the other places with no bottlenecks or, if you will, choke points. But as more bullshit, a new graphic comes up. Same map, different pattern of lines. Now we have webs within countries, sometimes within continents. But between countries, and especially between continents, there are only a few lines. It's not web-like at all. Randy looks at Cantrell, who's nodding slyly. Many net partisans are convinced that the net is robust because its lines of communication are spread evenly across the planet. In fact, as you can see from this graphic, nearly all intercontinental web traffic passes through a small number of choke points. Typically, these choke points are controlled and monitored by local governments. Clearly, then, any Internet application that wants to stand free of governmental interference is undermined from the very beginning by a fundamental structure problem. Free of governmental interference? Randy can't believe he's hearing this. If the Sultan was a scruffy hacker talking to a room full of crypto-anarchists, that'd be one thing. But the Sultan is a government, for God's sake, and the room is full of card-carrying establishment types. Like those Chinese buzzcuts. Who the hell are they? Don't try to tell Randy those guys aren't part of the Chinese government in some sense. Bottlenecks are only one of the structural barriers to the creation of a free, sovereign, location-independent cyberspace. The Sultan continues blithely. Sovereign? Another is the heterogeneous patchwork of laws and indeed of legal systems that address privacy, free speech, and telecoms policy. Another map graphic appears. Each country is colored, shaded, and patterned according to a scheme of intimidating complexity. A half-assed stab at explaining it is made by a complex legend underneath. Instant migraine. That, of course, is the whole point. The policy of any given legal system toward privacy issues is typically the result of incremental changes made over centuries by courts and legislative bodies, the Sultan says. With all due respect, very little of it is relevant to modern privacy issues. The lights come back on. Sun waxes through the windows. The screens disappear silently into the ceiling, and everyone's mildly surprised to see that the Sultan is on his feet. He is approaching a large and, of course, ornate and expensive-looking Go board covered with a complex pattern of black and white stones. Perhaps I can make an analogy to Go, though chess would work just as well. Because of our history, we Kinakutans are well-versed in both games. At the beginning of the game, the pieces are arranged in a pattern that is simple and easy to understand. But the game evolves. The players make small decisions, one turn at a time, each decision fairly simple in and of itself, and made for reasons that can be easily understood even by a novice. But over the course of many such turns, the pattern develops such great complexity that only the finest minds or the finest computers can comprehend it. The Sultan is gazing down thoughtfully at the Go board as he says this. He looks up and starts making eye contact around the room. The analogy is clear. Our policies concerning free speech, telecommunications, and cryptography have evolved from a series of simple, rational decisions. But they are today so complex that no one can understand them, even in one single country, to say nothing of all countries taken together. The Sultan pauses and walks broodingly around the Go board. The guests have mostly given up on the obsequious nodding and jotting by this point. No one is being tactical now. They are all listening with genuine interest, wondering what he's going to say next. But he says nothing. Instead, he lays one arm across the board and with a sudden violent motion, sweeps all the stones aside. They rain down into the carpet, skitter across polished stone, clatter onto the tabletop. There is a silence of at least 15 seconds. The Sultan looks stony. Then suddenly, he brightens up. "Time to start over," he says. "A very difficult thing to do in a large country where laws are written by legislative bodies, interpreted by judges, bound by ancient precedents. But this is the Sultanate of Kinakuta, and I am the Sultan, and I say that the law here is to be very simple. Total freedom of information. I hereby abdicate all government power over the flow of data across and within my borders. Under no circumstances will any part of this government snoop on information flows or use its power to in any way restrict such flows. That is the new law of Kinakuta. I invite you gentlemen to make the most of it."